Hey y'all, my name is Ann Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. Back to another episode of Workforce 4.0. This is your host, Ann Wyatt. I'm here with Carrie Giles of ACTE, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about the critical work in pipeline talent development that ACTE is doing for not only manufacturers, but for other industry sectors as well. Carrie and I first met at Automate this year when she was on one of my Automate Live interviews with Christelle Kiefer from ABB. Such a great moment having three powerful women at the Automate Live desk.
That's right.
Talking about the future workforce. But Carrie, it's so good to have you. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Ann. And it was great to meet you at the Automate conference.
Absolutely. And for those that are not as familiar with your work at ACTE, which I've witnessed very recently firsthand in our own area here in Alabama. But for those that are not as familiar with the mission critical work that you're doing there, could you kind of explain a little bit more about the work and how you're helping employers bridge talent gaps in their communities?
Sure. Yeah. So this year I had the honor of serving as our Association for Career and Technical Education board president. We have about 27,000 members that work in all areas of CTE across the country. So honored to serve in that volunteer board position this year. But I also serve as a regional CTE administrator here in Ohio. So it's great to not only see what's going on here in Ohio, but across the country and how career tech is getting revitalized in a lot of different places. I know we're going to talk about manufacturing, but I think we're seeing a revitalization in all areas of CTE. And so that's super exciting too.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I just was, kind of telling Carrie to fill everybody in here. Last week, I went to a local area SHRM meeting, which is Society of Human Resource Managers. And the presenter was Dr. Wilson from our local area CTE, and they are essentially expanding, but there were so many great stories and testimonials from the HR managers there that were also at the meetings. I think that this is a great conversation, whether you're in HR, whether you're a manufacturing executive, or whether you are in operations. This is going to be such a crucial and beneficial conversation. But Carrie, before we get started today, I love a good karaoke night.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sure.
Do you love a good karaoke night?
Yeah, I do love a good karaoke night. I'm not sure I'm going to be up on the stage, but I'll definitely support some good karaoke friends singing, right?
Always. I think it's so much fun. If you were going to do karaoke though, because I get that. I understand. I'm always the person that goes last. I feel like I'm a little bit less memorable.
Right.
That way. But if you were the person that were doing karaoke, what would be your go-to karaoke song?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm kind of like a 80s and 90s country. I love a good 80s and 90s country song. So I guess it really depends on the night and the atmosphere, right? And I'm not sure I have a specific song, but I love that atmosphere, like maybe a Nashville 80s and 90s country atmosphere.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nashville is so fun.
Yeah.
Can we put in a request to do Automated Nashville?
Right. We're actually a plug. We're doing our national ACTE conference there in December. So if you love Nashville, we hope that you attend that. Yeah.
I would love, I am very close to Nashville. I would love to come check that out.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think, like some Shania Twain?
Yeah, I've seen Shania in concert. I'm probably even older than that with like some Judds. I love the Judds. That was one of the first concerts I went to. So I don't know if people remember them, but but I love some of their, or Miranda Lambert, or any good country singers. Yeah.
One time in college, during one of my first karaoke adventures, I sang Kerosene by
There you go.
Miranda.
Yeah.
By Miranda Lambert.
There you go.
Oh, yes. And that's everything. And that's all that just I have to say about that.
Right. Depends on the night.
Well, that's amazing. And if everybody out there listening is interested in this conversation and fully inspired by the time this podcast episode is over here, and you want to meet Carrie in Nashville, somebody call me. We're going to Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. But before we head out to Nashville, we've got to learn a little bit more about ACTE and the impact that it's causing across the country, really, for local area employers and our youth. And I've got to know, Carrie, like, what are your takes on that? What impacts are you seeing at your level within the organization that are critical to moving the progress forward on bridging the skills gap?
Yeah, I think we hear a lot about the skills gap. I think one thing that we're looking at across the country, and as I travel around to different states, is how do we expose kids to careers sooner, not just in manufacturing, but all other areas? I know we look a lot at high school, but middle school and even elementary schools. How do we expose kids and families to careers and kind of change that mindset? A lot of times in manufacturing, we think, oh, these are dirty, dark places, but that's not the case. And how do we get students and their families more exposed to what's really going on in current manufacturing and all areas of career and technical education? Because it's such a viable pathway. They can earn such a great living, but a lot of these careers, students aren't seeing what's actually happening out in the field.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, we do get concerned about safety and those types of things too, but even a plant tour,
right,
for somebody that is in elementary school, an elementary school kid, I think can absolutely has the power to shape their entire perspective on manufacturing.
Yep. And even bringing employers into the classroom, and just having them maybe work with some of the cool things or see the cool things that are going on. I think we have to do more of that, and we have to get employers involved more in our schools and with our youth at an earlier age and get that career exposure going.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that CTE is doing so well.
Yeah.
In the areas. I mean, that was really the big takeaway for me when I was kind of eavesdropping. I feel like I was eavesdropping when I was attending the SHRM meeting last week in North Alabama. We had a presentation on that and how the program and the curriculum is 100% designed by the employers that are partnering with CTE there.
For sure. Yeah, we're seeing, our advisory boards have always been a big part of career and technical education, but all the different levels, and listening to those advisory board members, getting them more involved and saying, tell us and show us what's going on out in the field. We want to be current. We want to be using current equipment in our classrooms and labs. And that's what we want our students learning on, so they can be, ahead of the curve when they get out into the career field. Because we always have to think ahead. What's going to be happening? I was at a conference last week. What's going to be happening 5 years from now? What does this career field look like 5 years from now? Because that's really what we're training for, is the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. But really giving like the freedom of designing their curriculum, I think is such a big deal. That's not something that now our CTE here, they work with high school kids.
Right.
And then they're able to get like dual credit for like Calhoun Community College or Athens State or whatever. But when they're working with these kids, they are putting them in real situations, real manufacturing environments, real robotics environments. I believe that they were talking a little bit about being able to create, really bridge the experience gap with the students and the employers. So what they did was they built a bank for their construction students. And then they said, okay, well, somebody's got to put HVAC in it.
Right.
And somebody's got to put electrical in it. And so then the students were putting HVAC and electrical and really building this bank. But there are also other situations with manufacturing employers directly that are, working with the CTE here, talking about how they were working with the students on, building car parts at Mazda, Toyota, and then even one company, Aviogen, they are in the poultry industry.
Right.
But they were talking about even taking like their kids to the vet and showing them like how all of this, how all this works. And I think back to when I was in high school, Carrie, and I don't think that I ever got, I had dual credit. I had dual credit classes. I don't think they were ever that fun.
Yeah. And I think the focus is, like you said now, is on what we call work-based learning. We call it at the post-secondary level, like internships or apprenticeships, but also just overall work-based learning. How do we get students exposed to careers? We don't want the first time that they learn about their career to be after, they've taken that job or gotten all that training and then decided, hey, I can't work in the medical field because I can't watch a blood draw or something like that. So we want to make sure that they're exposed to those work-based learning experiences. And that's one of the biggest supports ACTE has, is we support work-based learning and those opportunities for our teachers and administrators to learn from others what they're doing, implement in their classrooms and outside of their classrooms.
That is really cool. So I have it very good authority that you all are creating huge impact nationwide.
Sure.
And
yeah.
Thank you for that. I think there's a lot of folks that are grateful.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But it's not all just about hard skill sets.
Right.
And, some of the focus that I hear from employers is more along the lines of employability skills and soft skills and things like that. But I'm curious to know what you are also seeing and hearing from employers in manufacturing, like what their skills requests are to bridge the gap in the workforce.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, Ann, a lot of it is still those soft skills, or what we call like employability skills. Can the student show up on time? Can they pass a drug test? All those basic things, are they willing to work as a team member? We're seeing that a lot more. We're also seeing advances with things in AI. So, can they learn and be adaptable? But the other piece is, when we talked about advisory councils, is being able to know and work on maybe the equipment that, is up to date, and be able to adjust to those new things that are happening. A lot of what we're hearing and seeing, though, is, they're looking for employees that are just willing to, like I said, be a team player, show up on time, all those things that we kind of maybe take for granted because we always knew that was what we had to do in a career. But we're seeing that, especially after the pandemic and stuff, being able to talk to other employees in the manufacturing area and that type of thing to get the things done for their team and be on time, and all those great.
Absolutely. Yes. And even, being able to communicate effectively across teams as well is very critical.
Yes, for sure.
How do you think that those skills, like soft skills and things like that, with the technology advancing in the way that it's going, will change over the next decade?
Yeah, I think we're always looking ahead for our students, right? We know all of this is changing very quickly. I don't have all the answers, but I know that a lot of this, in hearing a lot of presentations on AI and things that are changing in the workforce, we have to prepare students to be adaptable and lifelong learners. And I think that is a mindset change. A lot of us were we're taught, hey, you're going to go through high school, you'll graduate, you'll go to college, and then you'll be in that same career forever, right? And that's just not the case for students anymore. The mindset has to change. They're going to be in, lots of different jobs, lots of different careers. And I think that's exciting, but also being willing to learn along the way, being a lifelong learner. How do we keep that mindset open to them that, it's okay not to know everything, but how do you change the mindset that you need to continue to learn, even 10, 20, 30 years into your career, right? So I think the technology is changing fast, but the mindset has to change along with.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And we have to encourage the folks that are training the incoming workforce too, to be open-minded about the technology and applications and how they're changing as well. Sure. Yeah, I think we mentioned this kind of before the recording started here, but doing things the way that we've always done them.
Right.
We don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah. And that's exciting for some people. And then some people like to do things like that forever. Right. So that's why it is a mindset change. And I think just the ability to learn and adapt and be part of a team.
Absolutely. And as we advance along in technology and what have you, I think that we'll find the folks that want to adopt to that, and they'll probably have a bigger piece of the puzzle,
right?
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I think some of those individuals could be already in the CTE programs across the country. Sure. I do. I'm really impressed by what I've seen firsthand.
For sure.
I think what you all are doing is very powerful work. For those companies that maybe have not had the chance to partner with a CTE in their area, I know I had one company that I had made an introduction to the local CTE here last week.
Yeah.
What are some tips that you have for them when they're interested in partnering with an educational provider like yourself?
Yeah, I think sometimes, again, going back to mindset, we know right now that a lot of employers are looking and need employees right this minute, right? That's one of the main focuses is, hey, you have seniors graduating and we're looking for employees, and that's, what their focus is on. A lot of the employer best practices that we see are partnerships that employers partner long-term, right? So they're willing to invest in students and in schools and even share equipment or donate things or bring students in for, like I said, those work-based learning experiences or tour, whatever the school needs, because the partnership is so important. It's a relationship, building that relationship with schools, with administrators, with teachers. And that's where we see a lot of the great partnerships come out of, is those employers that are willing to partner long-term, not just for employees right now, but for a long-term partnership, being a part of an advisory council, offering opportunities for students and even teachers, because teachers need to get out into the career fields and see what's current as well. So I think that's where we're seeing the most success nationwide.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so how do your companies typically partner with the educators? What is that relationship? Can you walk me through what that relationship looks like?
Yeah, I think it happens a little bit differently in all areas. I mean, we work in very rural areas where, we have maybe smaller companies that are partnering. And then we have in the larger areas, we might have big companies that are partnering. So I think that it happens in a lot of different ways. I think the main key is to just start the conversation, right? Don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, we want to partner with you. We want to work with you and your students, offer, like I said, to be a part of that advisory committee, or be a part of, offer a tour, or offer, equipment, or whatever the business and industry partner can offer at that time. But I think it's a mindset of, we're here to help each other. Yes, the Career Technical Center is training students to go out into the career fields, but the business and industry partners have to be willing to also give back where it's appropriate too. And that's where we see successful partnerships happen, is there's give and take on both sides. And I think those long-term commitments are usually more successful over time.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good general rule in business.
Right.
As well. If you really have the ability to partner with a provider or any kind of service provider, or anything like that, I think that the more, you really lean in on each other and communicate with each other, that's going to build your network for success, if you will. But what do you think that is also doing for our talent pipelines? Because to me, if I'm thinking about like the average 17 or 18-year-old, and they're graduating from school, and they've had so much investment from a company, and then they have signing day, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Do you see on average higher retention rates from companies that are leveraging this experience?
Yeah, I think so. Every state wants to keep their kids working with employers in the state, right? That's a big push now. How do we keep students closer to home? Especially here in Ohio, that seems to be a big push. And with the business and industry partnership early on, I think the students and families are more invested, just because those companies are investing in their students, right? And so like I said, the partnership happening both ways, but they're those homegrown partnerships, those homegrown experiences for students and families. And, just not being, the building you drive by every day. You actually know what's going on in there, right? And I think that's so important, that those opportunities are shared with the community. So those community partnerships to learn what's actually happening out in their communities, and get involved and get inside those great manufacturing facilities and things like that is so important.
Absolutely. And how do you feel like we're shaping the trajectory of parental thinking about manufacturing?
That's a great question. I think, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes with career and technical education, or what we used to call vocational education, there was this thought that only certain students go into that, right? That's not for my kid. That's not for my students. But that idea has changed, especially over the last few years. We're seeing our career and technical students not only go to the career center or the career technical program, but maybe still go on for additional training, either, and it depends on if they need it in their career. A lot of these students are making more money than their parents, right? Right after out of the CTE center. Or CTE program. But it does have to be a mindset, not just with parents, but with counselors, with teachers. We want students to get the training that they need for the career that they're going to go into. So maybe that is post-secondary training. Maybe that's going to the career center. It just really depends on what they want to do with their career moving forward. And so it has to be a continued mindset, like you said, by parents, by families, and even by folks in school districts.
Yeah, because you do need to get you do need to get the buy-in from your local school.
Right.
As partnership as well. Unfortunately, I think most of those are pretty successful.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Carrie, I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah.
Do you have any last takeaways on the CTE program? Any ways or ideas on companies on how they can get involved, or a good point of contact?
Yeah, for sure. So we obviously at ACTE, we support all of our members, which range from teachers to administrators to counselors and business and industry partners. You can connect with me on LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. But my parting words are just don't be afraid to get out there and connect with your local career center, your local school. I think that we have to start the conversation to build the partnerships. And sometimes we don't know where those conversations are even going to start. But I think both sides have to be willing to start the conversation. And it's always what will benefit students. I think that's what we always have to keep in mind is how are we going to benefit students moving forward? And I think that's the common ground that businesses and education partners stand on. So, so that's just a great thing to keep in mind. But I would be so excited to connect with any of you that want more information on how to do that.
I love that. And don't be afraid to start a conversation. I love that. And, it is true. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And normalizing that to be okay is, I think, the first big step.
For sure. Yeah. And we have a lot of large companies and a lot of small companies that are creating those partnerships. So maybe they can only take on one student right now for work-based learning. Maybe they can take on 20 students. So it just depends on what the goals are for each side.
Well, I love that so much, Carrie. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. We appreciate you so much. Yeah. For everyone that is interested in learning more about the powerful work that CTE is doing, you all have got to check it out because they are making such a huge difference in your local area, and you may not even know about it. Reach out to Carrie, and everyone else at your local CTE is also, I'm sure, a great contact point of reference. But yeah, thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you for everyone listening, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, Ann.